I'm here from Bono region with my commandant. That's my constituency youth organizer to protest against the injustice going on in the country. You see, as I said, when you come to Bono region, we have suffered a lot. That's when you come to the 2020 election. About 7 of my youth have been shot by these same state-sponsored policemen and then military officers. You go to Banda, one guy called Silas was stabbed. Azuku was recommended to be sacked. Now Azuku has been promoted as the director of operations at the National Security Head Office. You see, under MVP and Nanado, the more you kill, the more you are what? You are promoted. The more you cause harm to your neighbor, the more you are what? You are promoted. So we are here today to seek for justice for all those who have been affected. Not only Kaka, but the one who has been stabbed in Banda, the one who has been killed in Grand Panta, the one who has been killed in Agboglosi, the one who has been killed in Ododo, all of them together. You see, Kaka's own is just one.
It was a call to action as leaders of the National Democratic Congress took turns to list reasons why their supporters and indeed all Ghanaians should speak out. From economic hardships to police and military brutality, they called for change, among which immediately is the implementation of recommendations of the Emil Short Commission of Inquiry. There were loud calls from members of the party and others who decided to join the street march to press home a demand for the prosecution and punishment of members of security agencies accused of killing unarmed civilians. The demonstration follows the killing of 2 protesters at Ijura in the Ashanti region, an incident that is currently being probed by a ministerial committee. The protesters also demanded payment of compensation to all victims and for the Attorney General to be directed to prosecute all culprits. The leaders then presented an 8-key-point petition to the presidency and to Parliament. We're going to hear from those who received these petitions on behalf of the institutions, but first, here's what the leaders said as they addressed the protesters.
Nana Kufuadu, Oba Benya Konyai, Ojisan Sino Antraga Nafonya, Nawamanan Soha, Onwa Sukai Soso Susan, Australia, Sobetima Yajumanwa, this Ayana Yakaneho, Onunko Intimisa Juano, and Nunti, Obu Kotojepa, Chelsea, Yamuano. Naya citizens, or my papa, let the answer of my papa piano. Get me here. Sir, in Crenshaw, on the science said, Yenya or my papa Ajumano. Medanya Kupa says, and NDC. Emma Blue, my sorry, Ajina Acha said, Moya or my papa Ajuma. Moody and Sisaya. Nana Kufuadu, Osisama Mose, Sebibi, Empoyo, Mainua, Monsari Namunkai Kanagre, no say, way and Titima, it has a say a couple year.
Hey, General Kassaye, Kassaye, and Misra, what are we champion? Yayama said, Yerebosidi, Yentimas, Nasir. That's the leadership, no, and the Nama follow their leadership, no, ever can't tell them. Then I general car, Mama, you're trying maintaining social distancing. They will be up here every main road here, and I am moving. Yet I'm going with far all the way to Opavia. See, Opavia, the best branch for Stanley Heights. They are quite far, Aviation Social Center, they are the House Commission. They are for Cantonment Post Office, then after swing back road in the zone, I could be a Christ the King. They are the natural Flagstaff House. I hope any baby kind, any petition, any come on my belly, Nana the Damn Quest. The year, now the natural, I could get that information. na yafa so akwa independence avenue ne so yafa red runabout and AU runabout on na the India Parliament. In prayer ABC here as the national youth organizer, get more new na yamate straight to the flag tower. Here the
Now, after these addresses, the protesters walked from Accra Mall through the Defence Ministry and Lands Commission roads to Jubilee House, where the petition was received by a Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of operations, Emmanuel Adumwa Bosman, on behalf of the President. He assured that the issues will be resolved following due process.
And receive the petition so that what should be done officially.
Republic of Ghana. We believe that recent happenings in the country are nothing to write home about. And so the youth of Ghana have decided that today we will demonstrate and show our displeasure to what is happening and call on the President that the challenges that confront many young people and this country as a whole should be fixed. I will read the petition to the media, and after we will present it to you. It's a lengthy one, so I will paraphrase them, pick the highlights, and then leave it as such.
The microphones can go down. You can spark if you want them.
Petition to President Akufo-Addo by the National Youth Wing of the National Democratic Congress. The framers of the 1992 Constitution were spot on when they made provisions in Clause 1 of Article 1 that the sovereignty of Ghana resides in the people of Ghana, in whose name and for whose welfare the powers of government are to be exercised in the manner and within the limits laid down in its Constitution. In the strict adherence to the meaning of this provision, Your Excellency, you took the presidential oath on 7 January 2027, when you were first, 2017, when you were first elected President of the Republic. Although our party, the NDC, contested the general elections, which was subsequently decided in your favor by the Supreme Court of our Republic, you took the same oath on January 7, 2021, to serve another 4-year term. The presidential oath, as we know it, was not and cannot be fanciful words said for purposes of formality. Despite the polarized nature of our country, Ghanaians who voted for you, and indeed those who voted for your opponents, succumbed to your constitutional arrangements and entrusted their will and aspirations in your hands. The hopes of every Ghanaian, including your political adversaries, was to see you uphold the tenets of our Constitution, sustain the peace you inherited from your predecessor, improve upon the economic well-being of Ghanaians, fight corruption ruthlessly, provide decent employment for the youth in particular, and ensure the safety of everybody, amongst other things. Needless to say, these were the very teething issues you campaigned on and promised to deliver. Your Excellency, without missing words, it is heart-wrenching to state that your government has so far delivered the antithesis of almost all what you promised Ghanaians. It cannot be gainsaid that if you objectively and sincerely look back, reflect on the state of the country, bequeathed to you, and what you have done with it in 5 years, you have eroded almost all the strides our country have made. In our country, if our country was a clock, you would have rode it anti-clockwise. Though our country was riddled with some age-long challenges before you took over, issues of corruption, unemployment, nepotism, cronyism, and insecurity, among others, have increased unimaginably. You will agree with us that our country needs fixing, and there cannot be any good time to fix it than now. The danger, Your Excellency, is that there is no commitment from you and your government that these life-threatening challenges facing our country will be at least reduced, instead of teaming up with those who have taken inspiration from your edicts to be citizens and not spectators to fix the country. Your government is surprisingly averse to calls asking for the fixing of our beloved country. Those crusading for the country to be fixed have become enemies of your government, as they are either being intimidated, harassed, or killed by your militia. Respectfully, Mr. President, it is not out of place to point out to you that though Ghanaians signed a social contract with you, to resolve their problems, your government has become an insurmountable challenge that they are struggling to resolve. What we are saying is that your government has become a problem for Ghanaians to deal with. Objective minds in our nation and those in your government are whispering on corridors, having growing apprehension about where you are leading this country of ours. The leadership you have provided so far is one of let's finish everything today because there is no tomorrow. There is no hope for the youth under your stewardship. The very people you promised to protect are the ones being beaten or killed daily by thugs recruited into our security services. Those you promised jobs have either been laid off, lost their investments, or have not been employed at all. You have failed to build a just society. Today, more than ever in the history of the construction of our state, access to the few opportunities is solely based on possession of an NPP party card. Those who promise solely based on possession of an NPP card, those who promise infrastructure development, have either what your predecessors started abandoning or not seen any infrastructure at all. Perhaps the best thing about your government is how far your family members and cronies are feeding on the national kitty to the chagrin of all of us. The case of students, nurses, teachers, tailors, carpenters, Okada riders, truck drivers, doctors, masons, traders, civil servants, farmers to the last man on the street has been of agony, pain, and sorrow. In the world all over, governments are elected to work for people and not otherwise. Your Excellency, your government is not working for the generality of Ghana, but a select few, mainly family members. Now I'll tell you what we are demanding from you. Though it sounds needless to remind you of your pledge and campaign message to the good people of Ghana, it is worth it to make the following demands. Immediately implement the recommendations of the No Shot Commission of Inquiry forthwith, in particular, and direct the Attorney General to prosecute all culprits. Beyond investigating all acts of violence perpetrated by officers of the security agencies under your watch, ensure that all victims get justice as required by law. Victims of such acts of violence from Edra, Ablikuma Central, Banda, etc. must all not be denied justice. Make provisions towards decent jobs for the teeming youth of the country through proper structural economic reforms and business support for enterprises of young people. Ensure the safety and security of all Ghanaians. Stamp out corruption by prosecuting corrupt officials within your government and stop shielding them. We are asking that there is a fierce agency to halt the hopelessness nature of chronism that has crept into our country. Take steps to fulfill your campaign promises. Depoliticize, and the emphasis is ours, depoliticize the security services. Introduce reforms to give true meaning to its independence. We charge that all these reforms be led by experts in our country and not partisan appointees. Instruct the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice to improve the justice system and win the judiciary of partisan influence. We count on your failed self commitment to our nation as it is President in this historic moment. Thank you. Written for and on behalf of the youth of Ghana, under my good hands, George Mariado, National.
NDC's youth organizer, they're reading the petition that they submitted to the presidency and to Parliament, where their arrival was slightly eventful. Check this out. Yep, protesters arrived to closed gates, and there was some work to be done by leadership to control the crowds as they massed up against the gates. Eventually, though, they got in, didn't they, Daniel?
Yes, they did. Not
Daniel
everyone,
Dazi,
of course,
joins us, by the way. Daniel, of course, you were embedded in the protest from the very beginning.
Yeah.
You saw it all unfold. Yeah, what kind of day has it been?
Hectic, to put it mildly. So we started the protest at the Accra Mall. As you can see, that this was on the Liberation Road, I believe. Yes, on the Liberation Road, getting to the exit to airport. And at this point, everyone was really fresh. What you won't notice, what this shot does not tell you, is that they had separated the crowd into groups. So, Kojo, you see where the trucks begin, where the vehicles begin. You realize there's a gap between the group of people behind the vehicles and the group of people in front of the vehicles. That was an attempt to socially distance the supporters or the people who were demonstrating. It felt very, very crowded when you were walking amongst them, though, even though they were walking in smaller groups, and the gaps got bigger. By the time we got to, for instance, when we got to Jubilee House, the petition had almost been read fully when the group I was with arrived. Yeah, so I was only there for a short period of time, and then the petition. But Gifty, who was with an earlier group, arrived with them and witnessed almost the entire thing. So yes, that was the attempt to socially distance, and there were lots of people in nose masks, I must say. I mean, the visuals will bear you out. But
well, I mean, if even the journey to the destination had some attempt to socially distance, how about the arrival at the various destinations, presidency and parliament? Were they able to distance themselves socially while presenting petitions?
No. And I mean, you saw how even the reporters crowded around the youth organizer there, Giorgio Pariado. What happened actually was that it was when we arrived at Jubilee House that those little groups collapsed.
Right.
And then it became just one big mass of people moving from Jubilee House to Parliament House.
So the work to stay distant was somewhat undone.
It was largely undone. You know, a lot of the people were obviously exhausted, and so they feel caution to the wind at that point.
Daniel, tell us about the police and their presence and role. We know that in the lead up to this demonstration, there was actually some work to be done by the demonstrators to convince the police of their right to do so. The police had sought to use the same reasons they used for stopping the Fix the Country campaign from going on a demonstration. But they were told that the law they were relying on had lapsed without renewal, and so they couldn't stand on that to stop them. How did they actually participate on the day?
So on the day, what they did was basically what they were expected to do, which was move with the crowd, flank them along various streets. Their presence was really large. There were a number of them there, especially when we were heading down the bypass to the Defense Ministry, which takes us then into the switchback road to Jubilee House. In fact, that was the most difficult time for the security agencies, because when you're going down Liberation Road, it's your expectation that you would, if you're driving, for instance, you drive straight down to Jubilee House. That did not happen. When they got to Stambik Heights, they were asked to take a left and use the bypass to the Defense Ministry, which would then merge into the switchback road. But that's the people were not familiar, or they were not in agreement. I actually saw at that point the General Secretary Johnson Essiedu Nketia encourage them to use the 10, because I think it had been pre-arranged with the police,
right?
Which was what they did. They sat down, agreed on a route, agreed on a mode of protection. So you could see that road had been cordoned off to the protesters. Yes, the road from Stambik Heights to Jubilee House had been cordoned off. It was being used by the cars, and then from that point to the Accra Mall was closed to cars and had been made available to the protesters. So at that point, there was a bit of a fracas. I didn't go beyond a verbal protest. And then they went to the Defense Ministry and then to Jubilee House. So it was very, I mean, at Jubilee House, for instance, the police lined up at the edge of the driveway into Jubilee House itself. And they were not allowing anyone to come in there. As soon as I got there, I showed my microphone. They saw me and they said, look, get inside. My cameraman also had no trouble. He had trouble getting to the barricade because it was a crowd. Wow. But he didn't have any trouble getting through the barricade into that area. It was at Parliament House where he showed that video that things got a bit interesting.
Yes, and of course, by then you were inside Parliament.
Actually, when Johnson Esiru Nketiah was making that first announcement, I was at the edge of the door of the gate and I was outside.
So perhaps you can tell us, what exactly caused the confusion that required Mr. Esiru Nketiah to address this?
So, I mean, the first indication I got that we may have a challenge was I was standing at the site for the cathedral, which is just a few meters away from Parliament House's entryway. And Gifty called me and said that she doesn't know if she will be allowed to go inside. And she's looking for the camera person. So I came down immediately and tried to get an understanding of what was going on. I got close to the gate. So I realized at that point that it was pandemonium, to put it mildly. Everyone was struggling to get inside. Why? Because Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, Akamba, the organizer, the youth organizer, a number of the national executives had already entered with some of the people they were with. So the expectation of the foot soldiers and the protesters there was that they would also be allowed to enter. But looking at the crowd, the police decided not to allow anyone else to enter at that point. Now the media also arrived. And the media contingency for this was huge. Every media house was represented. And of course, we had to go inside, obviously, to go and capture what was happening. And then members of parliament arrived. And it's their place of work. He had to let them in. And then Johnson Esiru Nketiah and a number of other party executives were also there. So now the challenge was getting the party foot soldiers, who would obviously not be allowed to go inside like it was done at Jubilee House, was getting them to clear the driveway or to clear that space in front of the gate for those authorized to enter to do so. That is why you saw Johnson Esiru Nketiah on the microphone announcing come back. And this was after different groups of people had come to try and get people to clear up. He literally had to be an MC. He took a microphone. He said everyone should come back. We took a few minutes for everyone to come back to clear a tiny space for people to crash through. And then there was a group of MPs who came by us quickly and they went through. And then he proceeded to announce, okay, let's let the media go in. We went in first. Then the MPs, the larger group of MPs went through. And then the party executives, the rest of the party executives, then he himself. And then after that, I was inside because we had to rush and go and position ourselves to capture the petition reading. So that's what happened at the gate.
Which you absolutely did. And by the way, thanks for giving us a personal walkthrough on today. Feels like we were there, doesn't it? Okay, so, at this point, taking over from Daniel's narrative, the petition was then presented to Parliament. It was received by the Majority Leader, Oseche Mensah-Bonsu.
First, gave an indication that the Speaker of Parliament has had to respond to an invitation by his colleague in Nigeria. And that is why you're not seeing him here. The Speaker is not by any means avoiding the demonstrators. He's had to respond to a call from his counterpart in Nigeria. That's why he's not here. There's a reason why the Minority Leader and I are here to receive your petition for and on behalf of the institution, and indeed because it was addressed to the Speaker, we are receiving it for and on behalf of the Speaker. But having said so, I guess it will be important before I make a few remarks to allow the Minority Leader to make an observation, a brief observation, and then I will come in to wrap it up. Minority Leader.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for presenting the petition on behalf of the youth of Ghana. Our assurance to you is that Parliament will not fail the people of Ghana in demanding that right be done, and right be done to safeguard the peace and stability of our country, right be done to safeguard the stability of our country, and right be done to safeguard our democracy. Essentially, the bestiality of unruly behavior of the security agencies is not acceptable anywhere. We will look into it, probe into it, where it requires that we read the security agencies of those concerns raised. Parliament will not hesitate in doing that. Understand that the demonstration has generally been peaceful. That is how it should be. Freedom of expression is important, and freedom to demonstrate is important in a democracy for the expression of legitimate grievances. Where you have come is a forum where these grievances will be digested, so you will hear from the Parliament of Ghana on the concerns that you have so raised. I'm sure that there will be a full debate after the Speaker in the House is apprised of the issues raised in the petition. So thank you very much for being peaceful. I would yield to the Leader of the House. Thank you.
My colleague, the minority leader, yes. And as he has related, the right to assemble is a constitutional right. The right to demonstration is guaranteed by the Constitution. And the right to express yourself is also legitimately guaranteed by the Constitution and by our statutes. And that is why you're here. I think that the issues that you have raised relating to the protection of the lives of Ghanaians is at the heart of this, and I think that it's important that all of us relate to that. Since 1992, when we returned to constitutional administration, we've had several instances of bestiality, as the minority leader has related to, involving security forces who are really under obligation to protect lives and livelihoods of Ghanaians. And so, having come here and submitted your petition to Parliament, it is left to Parliament to cause an investigation into it, and as the Constitution provides, any such investigation or inquiry could lead to legislation, or perhaps tightening the legislation to prevent what we have been witnessing. I think that every life in this country matters. Every single life in this country matters. And expression of our constitutional rights should not result in bloodletting. And that's why I'm happy that you are here, that you have organized this peaceful demonstration and come to Parliament should suggest to everybody that democracy is working in Ghana. We are not a perfect democracy, and that infractions must be dealt with in order to correct the system. And I think that that is the way to build our democracy. So I'm happy that you are here, and I thank you for being peaceful in today's organization. And Parliament, upon the return of the Speaker, will trigger the necessary processes to deal with the petition that you have submitted.